what about this process so far has been normal? Like if someone's going to go around calling you dumb as a rock, a nincompoop, stubborn mule, stubborn moron, too late, he's a knucklehead. I mean, it's like you ever see the movie Click with Adam Sandler? But he's got this remote and he can kind of fast forward through the parts of his life that he doesn't want to deal with. On that remote, there was a mute button. And when his wife was like nagging him or whatever, he just hit mute. Powell can do the same thing. It's like a mute button. Like, I don't need to listen to this.
RenMac Off Script originated as a weekly internal research meeting designed to summarize and discuss what happened in Washington, the markets, and the economic data over the past week. It was always intended to be and remains a free-flowing conversation with no discernible objective other than to extract the wisdom and opinion of our analysts and their expertise. This is a conversation among colleagues. Individual circumstances are unique and nuanced. Do not mistake these conversations for investment advice because it's not. Here we go.
All right, welcome to RenMac Off Script, where we openly discuss markets, economics, policy, history, and life. It is Friday, August 8th, 2025. I'm Steve Duttonhofer.
I'm Jeff DeGraff.
I'm Neil Dutta.
And I'm Steve Pavlik.
Welcome back, Jeff.
Thank you. Have you been to Banff?
No, that's one part of Canada I have not been to.
It's really nice. I would say it's like I died and went to heaven if heaven were math camp. Like, wow, all right. Very touristy. But what do you expect?
You went through Calgary?
Yeah.
Fantastic place.
Yeah, no, I mean it's fantastic for sure.
Lake Louise, did you go there?
Yeah, you have to go to Lake Louise and Emerald Lake and something to Falls or something. Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah. Have you been?
To our 51st state?
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah. To the 51st state. I think we should make it a maple leaf, right? Like a maple leaf instead of a star.
I want to go. I'm just waiting for so I don't need my passport anymore.
It's the only hang up was, I guess they're like 3 ounces versus 4 ounces at the TSA. And so that did throw my wife for a bit of a loop yesterday coming home. But other than that, it all seemed very, North American-ish, if you will.
Were you treated nicely? I mean, you're from Michigan, so you might as well be a Canadian. So
I can get into the accent, eh? Yeah, I can do it pretty easily. I could start going right back to the hockey days, huh? Yeah, I was treated respectfully, yes. It's amazing what the American dollar will do still. They all want to.
When I'm walking around Brampton in Canada, they definitely think I'm from there. So.
Is there a specific reason? There's a large Indian population in Canada. I mean,
Well, I believe they have a very large Sikh population in particular. I don't know why that is, but certainly politicians of all stripes cater to the Sikh community in India.
Well, I was very afraid that maybe I'd be taken hostage as kind of a negotiating play for the tariffs, but clearly I don't carry enough bona fides to make a difference, so they let me back in.
Well, there's a good jumping off point then. Why don't we kick it off with tariffs? I think it's reciprocal tariff day today, right? We've got this India stuff.
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday, sorry. Sleep at the wheel. So what's going on?
Well, I mean, it's what we were sort of anticipating. It was sort of announced, I guess, the prior week and said they're going to take effect on Thursday, and they did. And I think that's going to be the thing to watch moving forward. We keep hearing all these conversations about, what have been the economic effects of tariffs. And at this point, it's been mostly this 10% baseline. Obviously, Canada and Mexico have 25% tariff that they're dealing with. I guess now they've gone up to 35% in Canada's case. But, now we're going to have higher tariffs. The effective rate, I believe, was about 2.5% at the start of the year. It may have been about 8.5%, just prior to yesterday. And now it's probably inching up to about 15%. We're probably going to get some more sectoral tariff announcements next week. So, I think it's sort of TBD, and maybe this sort of bleeds into Neil's world as to, now that we have the tariffs in place, how are these additional costs going to be passed on and distributed between exporter, importer, and consumer? So I think that's sort of thing to watch. And so a lot of the conversations I had with clients this past week is, thinking about these tariffs now moving forward, some of the uncertainty there. We have more certainty on the tax bill side now that that's been taken care of. And you think about, the desired goal here of the administration: increase growth, increase foreign investment, particularly in some of these strategically important sectors. That's when you get into the sectoral tariffs. I think that's when you look at some of the benefits of the bill. Be able to do the immediate expensing, do the research and development. That's to try to create an attractive environment for this. I think the challenge is going to be you're probably looking at years rather than quarters for a lot of this desired, increase in manufacturing facilities to take place. So I think that's sort of how I'm thinking about it.
Hey Neil, that's a good question. We had that actually from Michael Orkin, a good friend of ours, longtime friend of ours. Who's actually paying the tariffs? Is there data on that? Earnings look pretty good for the second quarter, but we're not seeing a flow through to inflation, or are we?
Well, you are. You just have to know where to look. I mean, when you look at things like household furnishings, household appliances, there's not really much doubt that the tariffs are being passed on to some degree to the consumer. Right now it's pretty clear that foreigners aren't really eating much of the cost. So I would just say that most of the cost is being borne, at least 2/3 by U.S. businesses and consumers. So the question is how much businesses have been passing on prices, and right now it looks like they're eating it on their margins. And I would just say, as firms get more clarity around what the tariff regime is going to be, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. So, I do think that there's a bit of the markets kind of seemingly saying that it's not the tariffs per se, but the uncertainty around the tariffs that matter. And I don't know. I mean, I think that remains to be seen. Ultimately, companies have to respond to a margin squeeze. That either means they'll raise prices or cut employment or hours, or some combination of all of those things. So, to me, I think at a minimum, it should leave you somewhat cautious on the outlook for employment. With respect to inflation, tariffs represent relative shifts, right? And so you may see the prices going up for specific items that are, that have a high import content, but that'll come at the expense then of, other areas within the consumer inflation goods and services basket. So you would expect service sector inflation to cool off. And, specifically, I think you're seeing rents continuing to slow. So, it's still, the truth is that it's still early goings. We haven't yet felt the full effect of the tariffs yet. I do believe that. But I'm skeptical how much companies will actually be able to pass on price increases to consumers. Their inflation expectations, actually, if you look at the New York Fed survey, their inflation expectations haven't really come up all that much. And, and as a result, it just implies that they're somewhat resistant to take on higher prices.
Is India sort of in the crosshairs now? Modi looks like he's had a falling out with Trump.
Well, not only, yes, if you're asking me,
since we're on that.
I don't know if you can tell, but I'm not exactly an expert in Indian-U.S. geopolitical relations. I'm not, but I would just say, look, you have to, it's just, read the headlines. Modi's going to talk to Xi at the end of this month. So you have to ask yourself, is that in the U.S. interest of having, China and India closer together? Because typically, India has been a check on the Chinese and is part of this Quad framework, right? With Japan, India, Australia, and the U.S. So if India is moving closer to China, is that in the U.S. interest? We've obviously had multiple administrations trying to push the U.S. closer to India and firm up those relations, and that goes back even to President Trump's first term. So. we'll see. Obviously, he views India as a thorn at the moment in terms of his larger ambitions to negotiate a peace deal with the Russians. Now, I'm not so sure, honestly, like going after India on Russian oil is really going to do much because, yes, the Indians buy Russian oil, but so do the Chinese, right? And also, the Indians, those margins, when they refine that product, those margins go to India, not to the Russians. So, I think that's an important thing to kind of to consider.
Yeah, I would just add, I think it's important to remember that the effective date is August 27th, and we're recording this on August 8th. And to me, that suggests a desire to try to prolong negotiations. Trump sort of typical strategy, escalate to try to de-escalate. We'll see if that'll be effective. But, we had seen reports that the two sides were relatively close to a deal. I think India was one of the first out of the gate when Trump announced the reciprocal tariffs. Maybe that's sort of my glass half full approach to this. But, as we get closer to the 27th, that's going to be important. I think it's also important to note that U.S. Negotiators are going to India on the 25th. So to me, that suggests a desire to get a deal done.
Steve's most worried about his skincare products and his routine and what that's going to be like for the impact. Do you exfoliate first, Steve? How do you do that with
you got to clarify with Steve.
Yeah, not you, Duttenhofer. Look at that guy over there.
No, none of it.
No, here we go. Come on, this is an open podcast. We're honest here. We're true brokers. Stop hiding behind it.
This is just my natural glow.
Yeah, God.
A lot of lacrosse fields.
SPF 15, bro, or at least I don't know for you, like 50 for me.
True story. I actually put 50 on. How about that on my face?
After the fact?
Yeah, it's like a moisturizer.
Yeah, jeez.
Fantastic. Speaking of game theory and all this stuff, what's going on with the Fed seat? Neil?
Who's that for? Is that for me?
Yeah, I'm just curious as to where we are. I know there's, between the open seat and the chairmanship, like who's going to get it? What's going on? Who has
all right, well, let me ask a question first. Neil, if you get the call from POTUS, do you think it comes up on your iPhone as POTUS or does it come up as, potential spam? What does that look like? If you get the call, are you taking a Fed seat, Neil? If you get the call, are you taking a Fed seat?
Well, just so you know, Jeff, I can be bought not to. Just to put all my, I'm a cold-hearted capitalist.
Yeah.
and we live in a free market of labor, and I absolutely can be bought.
See, I told you it was an open podcast.
Let's be honest, and I think no one on this, among the four of us, would be surprised. Anybody in a seat like mine would take that call, obviously. It's sort of like, come on. But look, Kugler resigned. Actually, it's effective today. Trump has already announced a replacement. That's his current Council of Economic Advisors chairman, Steve Myron. Obviously, Steve Myron is a top-notch economist. And I would just say, he was hawkish last year. He criticized the move to go 50, but he supports rate cuts now. I don't think it really matters much in the scheme of things at the moment because the market's already pricing in cuts and you just basically have another official that supports a rate cut. So, I think that Myron is someone that will probably, he plays nice in the sandbox. I don't think he's going to go in there with a baseball bat trying to, break heads at the Fed. And, look, this is essentially, it's a classic game of chicken, right? Powell has he has his card. His card is whether he gives up his seat once he's no longer chairman. That's his trump card, so to speak. And I don't suspect that he'll give you any kind of indication about what his plans are, frankly, until someone is nominated, and I don't think he does anything until that person is confirmed. So, this is a very unusual situation, and that could make for unusual circumstances later, right? So it's yes, it would be almost unprecedented for Powell. I mean, it's happened before, but it would be very odd if Powell didn't resign his seat. But what about this process so far has been normal? What about this process so far has been normal? Like, if someone's going to go around calling you dumb as a rock, a nincompoop, stubborn mule, stubborn moron, too late, he's a knucklehead. I mean, I don't know.
You'd end up hosting the podcast like me.
Well, it's just
there's always room. There's always room.
I mean, it's like, it's the rough equivalent, frankly, of, I've said this before, it's the rough equivalent of pressing an elevator button over and over and over again, expecting the elevator to come to your floor faster. Like, it just doesn't work. I mean, Powell.
It doesn't?
Powell, I mean, Powell, it's like, you ever see the movie Click with Adam Sandler? Where it's basically, it's almost like It's a Wonderful Life, kind of the modern version. But he's got this remote, and he can kind of fast forward through the parts of his life that he doesn't want to deal with. And, the moral is basically, if you do that enough, you basically, you miss all the great parts, right, of life. Okay. On that remote, there was a mute button. And when his wife was like nagging him or whatever, he just hit mute. Powell can do the same thing. It's like a mute button. Like, I don't need to listen to this. So, it's like, again, like, it's a game of chicken, and it's really about who's going to swerve first. And for Powell, it's really a legacy issue. Like, do you want to go down as the guy that didn't give up your seat? And, we'll see how it works out. I would just say that the longer Powell sits in his seat, my opinion is that Waller's chances are better as a result.
Well, let me ask a real quick question. Do we know why Kugler pulled the ripcord?
I don't know. I mean, she was going to be gone anyway in January, and she didn't vote at the last meeting for personal reasons. So maybe, I don't know. I hope everything's okay, but I'm not sure. But she wasn't going to get nominated again. So the writing was all for her.
Right. But I mean, do you find that suspicious? And I don't know exactly how this works from a.
I find it all very suspicious, but I hate doing palace intrigue. I mean, there are probably people that think that, Jerome Powell talked to Kugler to get her to resign, to put the administration in this sort of tricky spot to begin with. There was an article in Breitbart that came out this week, basically saying that Bessent might take the job, even though he's repeatedly said he doesn't want it. So there's a lot. I mean, look, there was an article that came out today that made Governor Waller's odds jump in the prediction markets. But this is sort of typical of these processes where you have someone shoot up and then come down, and like in these prediction markets. So maybe Waller is peaking too early. And if you read the article where Waller was promoted, or what got his odds going, it reads basically like stuff that people around Secretary Bessent would say. Like, he's had good forecasts, he's had good calls, he's already supporting rate cuts, he's getting the committee to also support rate cuts, which is true. But I don't know, like, if you're Secretary Bessent or the people around him, like, what would you have done differently if you want the job for yourself?
Well, you made a really good point. Look,
this is all like 4D chess, but
I get it.
But to play 4D chess in the administration, I think it's Bessent.
You made a great point, which was, does the Fed already have a shadow chair, right? In that he dissented, he's kind of doing things that are more in line with how the administration is thinking or hoping the Fed acts versus versus kind of towing the line of Powell and company.
We do have a shadow Fed chair. His name is Christopher Waller.
Right.
And it's already out there. The question is, does this recent article put him in a more challenging position where he has to, maybe keep dissenting? Maybe does he have to dissent? Does he have to dissent in more, strong a manner? I mean, it doesn't put, so look, I mean, this is the move to put it Myron, I think, buys the president time. It kind of tables the conversation for the time being. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, Powell, his term as chairman is up in May. And like I said, I don't think he's going to give any indication about what his future plans are anytime soon.
Well, I would just add to Neil's point about more or less the punt that I would call it by the administration to put Myron in there. There's one school of thought from maybe the Hassett supporters that, he's one of the best players on the field when it comes to trying to explain sometimes or trying to defend the indefensible at times in terms of the economic agenda from the administration. And the idea that you want to take him off the field by putting him over as a Fed governor right now, when we're talking about all this potential tariff uncertainty and the economic impact for over the next few months, may not necessarily be desirable. So I thought that was an interesting take.
Yeah, but I guess the question is where's the center of gravity in terms of policymaking in DC going to shift to next year? Is it going to be at Treasury? Are we still going to be dealing with? I mean, the tax law is done, right?
Well, you have to write the implementing regs at Treasury, but yeah, I mean, they passed the bill.
I mean, you could do regulation implementation at the Fed. I mean, that's like financial sector deregulation is part of the Fed's portfolio too.
You're right. I mean, if Treasury Secretary Bessent, it'd be difficult to tell President Trump no if he says, I want you to do this.
Not only that, I mean, I think objectively, I mean, this is. I wonder whether, I mean, it's like Kevin Hassett, Dave Malpass, Chris Waller, and Kevin Warsh. I don't know. Do you think who's compared to Bessent? Or do any of those guys who do you think is more impressive?
Let me vote.
And do you think Bessent knows it? It's just an interesting thought experiment, guys.
Yes, certainly Secretary Bessent. All right, we got to get to the mailbag. Harry, good morning.
Okay, good morning, guys. So today we have the question come from Riley Roach. His question is, do you think we are in a new macro regime compared to the 2010s? Something structurally different in terms of inflation rates and fiscal policy? If so, how do you think markets are underpricing this? Thank you.
So fiscal policy, right? So something structurally different in terms of inflation rates and fiscal policy. I'll quickly throw in that a lot of the work that we do, we have two regimes. We have kind of the totality of data. If you're using the S&P 500, you can go back to 1957. If you're using crisp data and some deeper pools, but with less constituents, you can go back to 1925. Use Russell data, you can go back to 1979, et cetera. I think one of the interesting things, particularly as it comes around to, say, the dollar for financials, for industry groups, et cetera, is you really did see, and we do this with T-Stats, you can see it, you really did see a break in the consistency of data. In fact, you could talk about the correlation between yields and equities as one of those breaks between pre-GFC, Great Financial Crisis, and the post-GFC. And so you had behavior that was much, much different post-GFC versus pre-GFC. And that really was going until about 2018, maybe 19, and then COVID kind of absolutely threw a wrench in it, and nothing really lined up anymore. But since then, 100%, you have seen shifts in the data that takes us back more pre-GFC. And I think part of that's inflation. Part of that is this unconventional policy, which I'll let Neil speak to, with quantitative easing and the like, even though I know that there's still some of that balance sheet runoff. There's yield curve normalization. All those things are starting to happen. And we're starting to act more like we were pre-GFC than post-GFC. So 100%, I do think that there's some of that in here. The real question is, how much of that 10 or 15-year period was actually being priced in as kind of the new normal? And, I think there was some of that probably with yields, but we don't really see, a lot of people thinking that much differently, in terms of sectors, in terms of styles, et cetera. So I do think there are probably some places where the sharps can come in and find some opportunities, some high expected value. But without question, Riley, we have seen a shift and a shift back now to something that is more normal in terms of pre-2008, 2009.
Yeah, any thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I think, the way that sort of aligns with some of our thinking is basically, it's unlikely then that we're going to go back to some kind of a zero rate policy, right? I mean, if you're going back to normal, what about the financial crisis? Like, you have to ask yourself whether you think the financial crisis period was the anomaly or was that, or not. And I don't think I think it was the anomaly, and we're kind of going back towards something of, the old normal, which means that, interest rates will be somewhat higher, neutral. Equilibrium rates is probably not zero in real terms. It's probably somewhat higher than that. And that's going to have implications for market pricing. Obviously, in the 2010s, we had, very high equity risk premium. And as conditions slowly normalized, that decline in the risk premium was a significant tailwind for equity prices. And now you're at a point where the equity risk premium isn't high. Maybe it's pretty low. And so what does that mean for returns going forward and valuations across the market? So I would tend to agree with a lot of what Jeff said.
Okay, and Riley, thank you very much for that question. We'll get a hat out to you, RenMac trucker hat. We'll also get one out to you, Michael Lowry, for that POTUS question as well we used earlier. So I'll get a hat out, that black and white one that you requested. Thank you. Week ahead, Steve Pavlik, what are we watching?
Well, I think Tuesday is important because that's August 12th. And as of this recording, Friday morning, President Trump has not agreed to the 90-day extension on the China reciprocal tariffs. So all indications are that he will, given the comments by U.S. negotiators as well as Chinese negotiators. So for some reason he doesn't, that would definitely be a shock. The other thing to watch next week, too, again, we're recording this Friday morning, we have these secondary tariffs that are supposed to go in place with respect to Russia. So that would impact a lot of energy purchases from China as well as India. And I mentioned that as, we're trying to see whether or not Trump actually follows through on that, because he's supposed to have a meeting next week, potentially with Russian President Vladimir Putin, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. And there's a chance that all three may actually have a trilateral, too. So I think those are probably the big things to watch, as well as we continue to see more discussions on the details of these frameworks that have been announced. Are we going to see more exemptions? My guess is yes, but that's going to be important to watch in addition to the sectoral tariff announcement that we talked about earlier.
Okay. Neil?
Well, it's a big week. We have CPI data. That's on the 12th. The market's not looking for much. I mean, it's 0.2 on the headline, 0.3 on the core. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if you get a surprise one way or the other, and how much of the bets around September come off. I mean, perhaps if you get an upside surprise, maybe the market takes a cut off the table for the year. We'll see. I mean, it's sort of weighing the ongoing disinflation in services against the potential upside surprise in goods inflation. We'll also get retail sales at the end of the week. The market's looking for 3 tons, ex auto and gas. A lot of the credit card data is signaling strength. But the important point is, if the inflation numbers are coming in firmer than expected, is that the reason why the credit card data has been stronger than expected, right? Because it's all reported in nominal terms. So is that a price issue? And does that really just mean the volume of goods sold is coming down? And we also get some data on industrial manufacturing production. Manufacturing hours worked wasn't strong in totality in the July employment data. So that kind of sets the table for another weak reading in factory output.
And Jeff, with a week off or a couple of days off for some perspective, looking out to next week, do you see anything different?
Well, you're going to start to wrap up earnings season. It's been a mixed bag for earnings. What's interesting is some of the work that we find from a regime standpoint is positive surprises, right? So, just as a kind of a level set here, when you look at earnings surprises, it's forecasting a beat, a meet, or a miss is actually surprisingly easy, relatively easy. It is just kind of the game within the game, which is what happens after that. And so, we've looked at, kind of what's been happening around these beats. And just as a baseline, about 62% of companies beat, right? So you can't say it's 50-50. It's really, they play this game. There's a game to be played here behaviorally. And so that's running about normal. What I think is interesting is when beta is high, which it has been, and it's started to come off, which is good news. I wouldn't say it's come off to the point where we can take a victory lap on that, but it's certainly starting to move downward a little bit in terms of its performance. We find that this is a point where overbought conditions that are kind of these strong charts don't tend to react well to earnings. They don't get clobbered, but they just don't give you that upside. So we're seeing that in some of the data, which I think is interesting. The other thing is, and we talked about this last week a little bit, is right now only 42% of the Russell 1000 is above its own 20-day moving average, right? So if you break that down all to the 1,000 names that are there, only 420 some names are above their own 20-day moving average. That's not a particularly hard bar to jump across, right? So you've got a market that's very close to a new high, and yet 42% of the names are above their 20-day moving average. So I think this is all setting up for that seasonal weakness, soft spot. Again, this is not a top. Some people comment that we're making some top call. That is not true. We're making a consolidation call. It's the foot off the accelerator type of call. You wait for the digestion period. You wait for the overbought conditions to settle in and go into kind of a low volume normalized experience. And then those are the points where you add to those strong charts. So I think that's what we're looking at. But we'll wrap up earnings season here, and then we'll get into the doldrums of the spring. One thing I wanted to ask Steve is, what's the latest on shutdown risk as you see it and as Polymarket sees it, and what's happening behind the scenes to prevent that from happening?
I think as of yesterday, it looked like there's divergence there in the poly markets. There was one that has just the odds for the end of the year at about 39%, 40%. And then you had one before the October 1st deadline closer to 50%. So I'm not really sure what to make of that. I think the thing to watch when Congress returns in September is there was an agreement on these nominations. Is that going to sort of sour the well, or poison the well, so to speak, with respect to Democrats and Republicans, and contribute to heightened partisan tension that's going to make it difficult to reach a deal? This redistricting race to the bottom is not going to help either. But I think two things to keep an eye on. One, the political pressure on Schumer. He got a lot of heat from the base last time in March when he sort of agreed to an extension without any concessions. So if Republicans try to jam him again, which they're going to attempt to do in the House by passing, I think, a clean CR, continuing resolution, the Schumer try to push back. The other wild card is President Trump. The reason that we don't have a nominations deal is because Senate leaders weren't able to negotiate one. It's that they did. Trump rejected it. So anything that's actually agreed to, even at the congressional level, there's always the Trump risk. So again, I still have it probably at about 45%. That's down a little bit from 60, just because House Republicans, again, reports suggest, are united in trying to get that clean stopgap. But again, 45% for me is high. Usually I'm about 25%, just to put that in perspective.
When do the clowns come back to the circus?
September 2nd. And that's important in the sense that, we talk about Stephen Myron, actually being in a seat potentially for that September Fed meeting. It's possible in the sense that, one, Myron was already confirmed to the CEA chair before. So that's important from a paperwork perspective, because the Senate, in terms of, doing the background, they just did it a few months ago. They've also have a lot of senators on record for having supported him. So if Trump really wants him, he's going to press for the banking committee in the Senate to hold this hearing. And he's probably going to press through to hold vote the following week, which would be September 9th. And if my math adds up, that would potentially put him there for the 16th and 17th. But to Neil's point, if the Fed's going to cut anyway, I don't know what you really need him there for that. So just something else to consider when you're thinking about September.
Well, the market's just is not considering a government shutdown at this point. So that's just something to keep in mind that could be part of the, kind of catalyst. Everybody looks for a catalyst. Everybody looks for a narrative, even though the market internally is weakening on these things. That might help to kind of level set and bring the internals in line with the news flow, which would be interesting.
All right, let's wrap it up there. I'd encourage all the listeners out there to go to renmac.com to see what else we do and get a free trial of our research in the off chance that you're not already a client. And you can follow us on YouTube, our YouTube channel. You can follow us on Twitter or X. But otherwise...
Are you on Bumble? Where do they find you on your dating profile site? Where's that?
Guy. He had 1 week of vacation and he's already needling me. He's been back for like 4 hours.
I had a joke, but I'm going to save it for after.
So follow us next week when we'll be 1 week older, 1 week wiser. Until then, I'm Steve Duttonoffer.
I'm Jeff DeGraff.
I'm Neil Dutta.
And I'm Steve Pavlik.
Thanks, everybody.